Okay guys, so this is basic essay writing skills for English literature. You may find this very handy when you're writing a commentary or an analytical essay on a particular text, or I don't know, in an exam, if you're taking the GCSEs or you're doing essays for the IB. So here we go with a basic outline of how you should structure your essays. So starting off with the introduction, it should not be long at all. It's a brief paragraph. Make sure you mention the title of the text, the author, and the genre of the text. And there should be a summary of what the text is about, and it should be very brief, precise, and concise. So make sure you don't start telling about saying all the story in the introduction. Remember, it should be very short. Just which leads me to my second point, the thesis statement. Probably so. Thesis statement. It's basically the question you're answering and your claim on it. Okay, or if you're writing a commentary, your main focus. Okay, basically the soul of your essay should be one sentence long, and your main argument or comment. And by that, you should remember always to refer back to that thesis statement. You always go back to that. Don't go off track and avoid verbaria. Go straight to the point always. And remember to connect your ideas. Don't just go all over the place. Remember that you have a thesis statement by which you need to abide to and return to. And moreover, if it's a question, then it's easier because it's given to you. So you base your thesis statement on your claims on that question, and you're always returning to that question. And always remember, just a quick recap, stay away from the essay. Always from a faraway perspective, and none of your opinions, or direct ones at least. Avoid saying I, my, we, etc. Always say it from a professional outsider perspective. That's essential for a good essay. So let's go. Remember that in your body paragraphs, you should use a very useful thing we used was the P. Point, evidence, explain. Yeah. And point should be your interpretation. The evidence should be a quote from the text. And explain, the explanation, how it relates, proves your claim. So you're basically grabbing a quote from the text, and you're saying how that quote supports the claim you make, relating to your thesis statement. And in the explain part, you say how it's relating or how it's proving it. And a very useful thing to do is, a necessary thing to do when you're analyzing is use literary devices to prove your claims. Like a metaphor, I don't know, the fact that the color gray is used implies sadness. And this proves how the essay is trying to talk about the complexity of human emotions or struggles. I don't know. You decide based on your situation, but use literary devices. Literary devices are essential. And so are quotes. Always remember quotes. You always need to support your claims. You cannot just start saying out of the top of your head what you think and what you interpret without having some evidence. And basically, after structuring your essay, the introduction and the body paragraphs, you try to focus one idea per paragraph. One idea per paragraph. Okay, you get the point. So don't try to include, I don't know, alliteration, pathetic fallacy, and metaphors in the same paragraph. You claim one idea for one paragraph. So if you were talking about feminism throughout the novel, you use a literary devices that prove this idea, and you explain all that in a single paragraph. Remember not to stretch your paragraphs too long. They should be considerably concise. You just want to be concise in your essays. You need to avoid saying too much. Remember, quality over quantity is always important. So one idea per paragraph, and probably I would suggest one literary device per paragraph, just to keep it simple. And then in your conclusion, don't just summarize what you wrote, because then it's just pointless. oh, in this essay no, like, what's the point of doing that? The point of the conclusion is returning to the introduction and then creating some closure to it, go back to the ideas you said in the intro and conclude to them. So I don't know, you go back to your thesis statement and you take a position where it was proven, disproven, the extent to which it's important. I don't know. I mean, if it's a literature you're speaking of, you usually you put again your main points, your strongest points, and you synthesize them into the concluding statement. That's pretty much very similar to your thesis statement, but it's giving it closure. Like, just picture a circle, intro and conclusion. I mean, sometimes you hurry through it because you're like, okay, I already did the whole body, and I mean, I'm just gonna close it, right? Yeah, who cares? And actually, the conclusion, it's very important. I mean, it's the ending to your essay, It's whether, I don't know, in subjects like psychology, it's your main claim on the thing, on the theory, like you're trying to close the essay and say what you've proven all along. So the body and the intro are actually aiming to go towards a conclusion, and the conclusion is using all the ideas you've made in here, and it's closing them, concluding them. So yeah, your conclusion should be strong and brief, not a long conclusion. It should be a short intro, a short conclusion, and the body is the path, the road. So you start here and you go there. Pretty simple when you see it like that. So make sure before you start writing an essay, be it in exam conditions or at home, that you actually plan it, You say, okay, in the intro, I'm going to do this, then paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, I don't know, up to paragraph 4, and then conclusion. And make sure you know exactly where you're going to say here, 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 and here. Which ideas? I'd suggest you put your ideas per paragraph, idea, and then it's easy. You have 4 ideas, hence 4 paragraphs, and then you determine which evidence you will use, to prove this idea, and based on that evidence, you examine this evidence by using literary devices. Hence, you're stating your idea, you're evaluating the idea through the use of literary devices. So it's pretty much, if it's too complicated, just remember P, point, evidence, explain. And remember that it's 1 idea per paragraph. And at the end, you should have chosen relevant ideas to your thesis statement, and in the conclusion you return to that thesis statement and you talk about how that thesis statement is correct, or how it's been proven, or in other words, I don't know, there are certain guidelines you need to avoid in the conclusion. And if you're finding it hard, you can play the so what tactic, which is like picturing yourself, I don't know, asking yourself, so what? So when you're find yourself in a brick wall, you say, okay, I wrote this, ask yourself, so what? And then when you answer that question, you do that repeated times in your head, and eventually you'll reach something, if you think you're missing something in your conclusion. So conclusions are actually quite tricky. It's not as easy as it seems, and you really do need to put some thought into it. It's very important. You need to have a strong conclusion, and it needs to be concise, and it needs to go back to your thesis statement, just like everything from the first paragraph to the conclusion. It needs to return always to the thesis statement, because that's the whole point of the essay. You're not just randomly talking about everything. I mean, you need to always be geared towards that original idea, and all these small ideas are parts of that whole. And yeah, basically that's my main suggestions for your essay writing skills. And yeah, so need to keep in mind, if it's an assignment you're doing and it's an essay you're writing at home without a time limit or restraints, what should be really good is to include some research shows further expanding your knowledge on the subject relating to your thesis statement, and quotes from such research is very pro. I mean, you put a quote that's related to the subject in the intro, and then in one of your body paragraphs you have an idea that's related to some research you've done on, I don't know, say philosophy, say it's related to philosophy. You quote a bit of the work of someone else, always referencing it because it's not your own, and it really makes your essay richer, and it makes it just better. I mean, it's more professional, you know. You're taking it a notch ahead. I mean, you're probably beyond the basic level. So yeah, just keep in mind those main guidelines, and at any point during the video just freeze it to take a look. Here are some good notes. I mean, it's pretty the basics, but it's always good to look back into the basics even if you're doing an advanced level, and always remember certain things you need to keep in mind to produce a good essay. I mean, it doesn't have to be really complicated. You don't have to use such complicated wow words. I mean, as long as you're precise and your ideas are good and you're proving them all along, and you have a complex way of analyzing the text, because your analysis is what they're trying to see, and how you materialize this into an essay structure with adequate language. I mean, it doesn't really have to be this huge amount of, I don't know, complex work. And no, just keep a structure in mind and follow these tips, and make sure you tell us what you think.